All right, let's get started. Item A, Zoom meeting information, check. Item B, roll call. Chair Seth, I am here. Vice Chair Ned Dorr.
Present.
All right, Alder Mark Stoyer.
I'm here.
John Art.
Present.
Amy Cox.
Present.
Corey Mim is not here. Did you hear from her? Okay, not excused. Julia Nordyke.
Present.
All right, and Krista Kananen.
Present.
And Mark Waldek.
Present.
All right. On to approval of the agenda for today's meeting, February 8th, 2023. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move.
By Mark Walter. Is there a second?
I can second.
I think, all right, John, we'll give it to you. All those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Agenda approved.
Who seconded?
John. On to approval of the minutes from last meeting, January 18th. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes? So moved by Alder Stoyer. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
By Walter. Marks with the motions. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Say nay. That is approved. All right, on to regular business. Discussion and possible action regarding a grant opportunity for USDA composting and food waste reduction cooperative agreements. Is that you?
That would be me.
Take it away.
And yeah, so this is something that Melissa brought to my attention, courtesy of the mayor, and something that we've looked at for the last, that's been available for the last several years, but something that would fit in with our sustainability plan in terms of reducing food waste. So the last 3 years, U.S. Department of Agriculture has had this composting and food reduction pilot project cooperative agreement program grant. It's not technically a grant, it's actually a cooperative agreement, which is, you can get into the details later. But it would help fund pilot programs with the goal of reducing, generating compost, increasing access to compost for agricultural producers, reducing reliance on and limited use of fertilizer, improving soil quality, encouraging waste management, permaculture business development, increasing rainwater absorption, reducing municipal food waste, and diverting residential and commercial food waste from landfills. Those last two things are probably the most relevant for what we talk about here, and we've talked about before that food waste represents about 25% of all the waste going into landfills, either as part of agricultural production, to stores, to residential food waste that people are throwing out, and institutional waste and so forth. So this program has a range of $45,000 to $300,000. The actual request notice of funding opportunity is not yet out for this year, but that was something that the mayor had brought up, that he had heard from the mayor's conference, that it will be released. It's typically in the past it's been June to September application period. So the funding opportunity will go up at some point. There's a 25% match from the local level. It can be cash or in kind, and USDA is very involved in the process, and that's where it's a cooperative agreement as opposed to a grant per se. So in a grant, they just give you money to do what you're going to do. And cooperative agreement, there's a much higher level of involvement from the agency itself. They help you develop a program. They make sure that it's an ongoing program, that it's sustainable, and there are some other criteria in here that would be relevant to a program that we might do. The other thing I took a look at, Melissa and I talked about this earlier. I didn't print it out on this one. Actually, I saved it for myself. But we actually, they funded this for 3 years so far, and the programs that are out there certainly could form a model for us in terms of something that we might want to do. I know that one of the suggestions was looking at a pilot drop-off program around the city. The county had a pilot drop-off program for a couple of years. There's successful programs in terms of getting people to actually contribute material. The problem that we need to explore and resolve is what do we do with the material at the end of the process. John and I have talked a lot about this because UWGB has spent a lot of time on compost. The county has actually done 2 regional compost facility feasibility studies over the years, so we can have a handle on what it would take to set up a compost facility. The problem is, one of the goals of this program is what do you do with the compost at the end of the line, and how do you use it? How do you scale it up to a citywide effort or region-wide effort? I represent the county as well. I've actually reached out to my supervisor, my boss, and said, is this something the county would be interested in? Well, if we were participating with the city, and yeah, I mean, it has to go through the same kind of approval processes that the city does, but county executive, county board, and the like.
So is there a budget kind of thing? Would the city have to put some money out? And if it's a cooperative agreement? So I'm just trying to figure out the funding or something like that.
Right. Well, so again, as a cooperative agreement, it's a little bit more flexible, and I haven't delved into this in great detail, but it does allow for cost sharing, including in kind. So it could be budgeted as staff time,
volunteer time.
volunteer time.
And the 2 sources that we identified, I think, in the grant document was volunteer hours can count towards a match, and HUD community block grant dollars.
Okay.
I don't know if that's the only source, but those are the 2 that were listed within the guidelines of what I read.
Right. And there, we'd have to come up with a project. We'd have to come up with, there's a fair amount of stuff. It's being a grant writer, that's pretty typical of a lot of grants that I've seen, especially at the federal level. So it's nothing onerous. One of the things that you do, when you write a grant, you score points based on, how you're meeting their criteria. One of the things they certainly are looking at is partnerships, public-private. The city, the county would be straight up eligible. Nonprofits would be eligible as well. For-profit are not eligible, but they could certainly contribute dollars, time, whatever to this. And I know that there are others in the area who are interested in programs like this. So we would have to develop a more of a program. The other part is, where does this come through on the city side of things? I think Melissa and I talked about that, and it's probably, I may have a different view on how things could go through here, because we're still at a pilot program basis. So you want to do an assessment and planning and so forth. And I think it kind of is a planning effort that they can evaluate this better than anybody else. But eventually it would end up being in DPW's hands. So
it might be at the drop-off facility for brush and that kind of thing, maybe, or another area.
Yeah, well,
I don't know.
When when the county did our drop-off program, we actually did an analysis of drop-off sites for organic material around the county. We had one at our recycling transfer station on South Broadway, and we got roughly a ton a month for almost 3 years. It was very successful. We had 250 households that were participating with one location. We tried a variety of other locations, but convenience really dictated whether people used it or not. We actually had the old UW Extension office on Bellevue. We actually had that site as a second site, and that worked really well until we sold it. The county sold it to the school district, and then that went off tables. We had it at Alloway's Yard Waste Center, but their Yard Waste Center nobody can find. You got to go down a dead end street and around the block and back into the corner. So nobody used it. We were actually working with John and UWGB to actually site a drop-off location on UWGB campus near the STEM Center, which would be a perfect place to put it. But then our hauler, the company that was taking our material down to the digester in Oshkosh, notified us that they weren't going to do it anymore. They just got out of the business of doing that. So that kind of put the kibosh on the
What
program.
about restaurants, things like that? I guess I haven't read all into it, but or stores, a lot of times there's so much food in the store, and it's like, well, you can't keep seafood for 3-4, you know what I mean? Where is that part of this thought process?
I would say absolutely. The program we were part of was working with UWGB. I think John Arndt can speak to that in a moment. but it was also, they were picking up material from the jail, the CDC, the Community Treatment Center. I think they were picking it up from, from NWTC as well. I thought they were doing food collection out there from the cafeteria. We approached Aurora Baycare, asked, looking at doing it there. So some of the institutions trying to get them to be involved in the process. Some are more open to it than others, but restaurants were actually working with our hauler with Sanimax. And they already do like oil pickups at places, and so they had just expanded into food waste. And then they were hauling it down to the digester at Oshkosh, at UW Oshkosh, and that worked pretty well. It's not, one of the criteria of this program is developing a program that's sustainable, and hauling food waste 60 miles one way is not exactly a sustainable effort. So yeah, that was part of it. So we'd have to, look, there are a number of things that have to be looked at and assessed in terms of what kind of project they were looking at, how extensive is the pilot, what's the involvement. I know for a fact that it was a drop-off program like we had, county would definitely be, involved in that because it's part of our long-term goal as well. I'm in the middle of writing our updated strategic plan, and that's part of the county's strategic plan effort. So, like I said, John can throw in, I know John knows a lot about this as well, and then we have somebody from Green Bay Botanical Garden who would like to have this as well. We open the floor.
Julia has had her hand up. Julia?
This all sounds really great, and I'd be completely in support of grant application. I feel like though the focus of the project should really be on the end of it, like a feasibility and site assessment for what to do with the material and how to, in a location that could be scaled up, because I don't really see, like, there's a big demand, like, from people wanting to compost. So I'm not like more concerned in the long term about there being like pilot drop-off sites, because I think the long-term goal would be that actually it's not people driving to places to drop off anyway. So I just think the purpose of the grant program would really be to focus on how do you make this like a site locally, what to, where and what to do with it.
I mean, I agree with you, Julia. That's a concern of mine. So we gather it all. So we set up a system where we can compost it. What do we do with the finished product? I mean, that's one of the challenges that UWGB is faced with as well. We are composting all of our pre and post consumer organics. There's only so many places that we can go with it on campus. So we're going to have to find ways to distribute it to the community. Could be, I think, less on the student side, but certainly the employees, that's a part of the picture. But we're generating a lot of compost. So we've got to find a home for it. And I think that's really what the city of Green Bay has got to look at, not only having a composting operation or partnering with somebody that's already composting, but then the distribution. As we were talking about it, just a small piece came to mind. I know there's an NGO out there, New Leaf Foods, that hosts the Green Bay Garden Blitz every year, and there they set up raised beds. Well, perhaps of all of the former raised beds that they've got over there, after year one, maybe those are locations of folks that might take it to enhance those raised beds. That might be a market, but I think you really need to get creative on where is this going to go.
I was gonna ask, John, I mean, there's, a lot of citizens. I have 9,000 citizens in my district, and I'm just wondering if there's a way where people would, because there's a lot of folks that are doing gardens in our neighborhood, maybe not a ton, but quite a few. And if it got to the point where, hey, we have some compost here, because I've tried to compost at home, and I don't know, it's not as successful as I would like to see it. But if there was a product out there, if you said, hey, we got X amount here, and I don't know if that's something that would be sold, or if people would just come and pick it up like they do at the waste sites, or, you know, the leaf drop-off sites, people come in and get soil and, you know, different things, they pick things up for landscaping, and that's just free if you're a city employee or city resident, so. I don't know, I'm just thinking that people might like that.
I do, you know, Steve and I, Director Grenier and I did have a brief conversation about this, and I don't know enough about the DNR regulations, but there are regulations surrounding food composting sites, you know, that differ from yard waste sites. So as far as like commingling or even co-locating those things, it requires, well, just a lot more. You know, I think whatever we're talking about tonight with that possibility, there's people that know a lot more about it than us, so we really can't just,
Yeah.
you know, go there at this point, because we don't really know what's all involved with it, but, yeah.
So the DNR has a person who really, Casey Lemensky, who used to be in this area, I think she's Madison now, a friend of mine who's with DNR, has a lot of knowledge on organic waste programs statewide and the regulations that are governed by that. We could certainly get her here, ask her, you know, virtually or in person to come and talk to the Sustainability Commission about what that entails. And I can reach out to her and find out what other options are out there. The other thing that Melissa and I looked at was, like I say, the list of 3 years worth of successful applications, and reaching out to some of those communities and finding out what their application was like. I mean, it's always easier than reinventing the wheel, is you borrow somebody else's application and you change the names, submit it as yours, right? But certainly just get some ideas of how successful the programs either are or are not, what's entailed in them. You know, what do we have to look at? How do they work with it and so forth? You know, you guys are talking Eau Claire. Melissa reached out to Eau Claire counties. What's her title?
Recycling and Sustainability Coordinator.
Yeah, and because they are one of the grant recipients, one of the recipients of this program, and it looks like they're still just on the beginnings of that program.
Yeah, it's gonna kick off this spring.
There are other people around the state who absolutely that are involved with this, that I would be able to contact as well through my organizations, just like the organizations I work with. Statewide conference on solid waste is in 2 weeks at the downtown. That way.
We're romantic, come on.
Yeah, over there. But anyway, they say, and there are a lot of people there who deal with this. There have been several successful programs in the state as initial pilots. They haven't gone out. Madison's done something, Milwaukee's done something, Stevens Point has done something, Eau Claire's got people. You know, there's a lot going on with it, but nothing long-term comprehensive at this point within our state. And it's coming. It's something we got to deal with. So I think this is a really good opportunity.
Yes, I agree.
Julia and then Ned.
Thanks, Seth. I was just gonna build on to what John had said too. It, you know, like thinking about the end of potentially even, you know, different types of models that it could be, maybe it's a public-private partnership type model. And then also it reminded me, you know, like Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District, you know, they produce and marketed and branded Milorganite. You know, and I'm pretty sure they use that like as a revenue product too. So I think being creative too, and not just,
Ned?
Thank you. To piggyback on what Julia mentioned, the public-private partnership. I know we had the gentleman from Greener Bay compost a few meetings ago. And he said, you know, he wouldn't be able to scale up to service the whole city. But if there are, you know, people like him around that are able to help out with this project, then this might be an area for us to reach out. The other thing I wanted to mention was, and I'm not sure, but I think we have members of the public who would like to speak to this or were interested in hearing what kind of partnerships the city could have with what they're doing. So if we do have anyone that likes to speak to this from the public, I'd like to suspend the rules to open up the floor.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Ned, second by Mark Walter. All those in favor of opening the floor, say aye.
I,
I,
Opposed, say nay. All right,
So
welcome.
if you wanna.
You can sit here.
You can
Yeah,
sit
welcome,
here and
Janice.
it's, state your name and your address. Or and your affiliation.
So my name is Karen Kolbeck. I'm with the Green Bay Botanical Garden. My address. Do you want the garden's address? Is 2600 Larson Road, Green Bay. And I just showed up for your meeting tonight just because the garden itself is starting to look at our waste. And we brought in Corey from Greener Bay Compost to have a conversation of, you know, some of the products that we're seeing in our garbage and maybe how we can help reduce that quantity. Primarily, right now we're looking at like paper products, maybe some cups. We're hoping to do something maybe with events. We do weddings, we have concerts, other social. We're opening up the children's garden this summer, this spring, summer. And so we know that that's going to, area is probably going to be heavily used, and as such, we'll probably be having a little bit more waste in that area also. So we're kind of just curious what others in the community are doing with their waste. And maybe what opportunities there might be for us to partner with other entities, whether it be the city, county, businesses such as Corey's, just to see what's, you know, available to help address the issue of our landfills. Well, thank you for letting me have an ear to the meeting.
I know that I've talked to the garden in the past. So I'm Mark Walter, I'm the Brown County Port Resource Recovery Department. So I'm a recycling educator. I mean, that's one of my roles in the county. And I've done several presentations out there, but also took a look at, did an evaluation a few years ago on what you were looking at in terms of waste and what could be recycled, what could not be within the given system we have right now. I actually still have a aluminum water bottle that I refill constantly. That's my.
Yes, we
Yeah.
did go to a,
Yeah, so, you know, certainly there's other aspects of, you know, waste reduction that falls under my bailiwick there. Beyond the composting stuff that you might want to look at. But certainly within this program. Partnership with a nonprofit would strengthen any application that comes through here, especially if you have a focus on what you have an answer to the question we've got. What do we do with the compost? You probably have a better use for it right now than.
you know what, we probably would have a pretty good use of it. I'm assuming now, you know, I don't know, to be honest, what the needs are in our horticultural, you know, for the garden. I think right now they're purchasing compost to amend the soil. We do a little bit of composting on site. But certainly I think there would be use to maybe integrate something that was locally produced into the gardens.
I have a question. So as far as land space at the botanical gardens, you're doing some composting now?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's probably, when I say composting, it's probably one of those very passive, where we have a bin where we're putting, you know, coffee grounds, some paper products, leaves, what have you, and
Mhm.
letting it sit and percolate.
Okay.
So it's not something that's actively worked on.
So is the garden interested in making a larger effort on site for composting, or having it, the waste, the garden's waste, food waste and paper plates and things like that hauled off and done somewhere else?
So I think we're open to a couple of different ideas right now. We were looking at the waste side of
Mhm.
how do we address what's coming through for some of our events and guest services. But and we really haven't had the conversation with our court staff to like, what are your needs for compost? And is this something that maybe we could, you know, expand upon? It was basically looking at how can we address our waste
Sure.
per se.
Yeah.
So that would be a
Okay.
conversation to be had.
Right, right. And I know one of the targets is reusing the compost in community gardens. It doesn't specifically say botanical gardens. But there is a children's garden there and, you know, I mean, I think that would qualify as a community garden. Is it nonprofit? I can't remember the.
Yes.
It is.
Yes, we
Okay.
are a nonprofit.
Mhm. So,
Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud. I'm on city council, so I mean, I'm just thinking about some options here as well, so. I think over time, I think we could come up with some good things. I don't have any. Ned, we had a 6-hour and 45-minute council meeting last night, so I'm. Not all here. I'm trying to be. So. You remember those days?
Oh, yes.
if there are other members of the public you wanna ask
Yeah.
before we close the floor?
Are there any questions for our guest or any other members, Sister Sally Ann or Jane Martin that would like to speak before closing the floor? Amy?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I actually, I know NWTC would be interested in something too. I don't have all the details and I'm in the similar spot that the Botanical Gardens is. But I actually just got a survey from our internal sustainability group today asking about how far, if there was a compost location spot that you could drop off at the college, how far would you be willing to walk with your stuff? So I know we're looking at it, so I know, you know, I think that there would be some connection there as well that we could work on, and just wanted to add that.
Any other folks, Sister Sally Ann or yeah. And just
We
state
do,
your address, please.
She's on the committee, this one.
No, she's not. Can
is
you,
it
yeah,
okay?
go ahead, just state your name and address for the record.
Okay. Sister Sally Ann Brickner, 3110 Nicolay Drive, Green Bay, Wisconsin. We do collecting of our organic materials, particularly breakfast, and not so much other meals, but in the kitchen they do as well. And I think we bring them to the yard waste site. We bring the materials to the yard waste site in Green Bay,
The one on east side near.
the east side one along East Shore Drive.
And if you haven't seen the city's compost facility, the backside, where everything is windrowed and turned and everything else, it's actually pretty, the city on the west side, for sure, I haven't seen the east side one, but the west side compost facility is very impressive. I mean, they've got a lot of material that they're turning all the time, so there is precedent for this type of facility. There would be to take this the next step that this grant is looking at in terms of addressing food waste and reduction in food waste, would take it a little bit different as well. There'd have to be more, as Melissa had noted, there's some more controls that have to go into play from a municipal standpoint, and there's some things that you have to look at. Again, the studies that were one of John's graduate students did a study for the county and municipalities a few years ago on a regional compost facility, and the West Side Compost Facility is actually a perfect spot for a big composting operation. So that's already there. Scaling it up to do food waste is another aspect, and then at the end of the day, what do you do with that compost? And that's, I haven't come up with an answer to that. So it would have to be something that would have to be analyzed as part of this, part of a project. Unfortunately, John, this says this grant will not support research. So you're out of luck there.
Any other comments or questions from our guests before we close the floor? Or we could entertain the motion to do that.
Motion to close the floor.
All right, by Holder Sawyer. Is there a second?
Second.
By Amy, all right. Thank you. All those in favor of closing the floor, say aye.
I,
Aye.
Right.
Opposed, say nay.
Nate, no, I'm tired.
Dissent. Thank you so much for joining us in person here. Cool. Other thoughts, questions, discussion?
Yeah, I'll pick it up. We've heard from two community members who both work for nonprofits. So I think that's an encouraging sign right now. So if nonprofits are going to be a part of this, that we have at least have two folks who've showed up today, interested in working. Possibly, I don't know if Sister Sally Ann was saying she'd be interested in the sisters. I know they're a nonprofit as well. But we, if we need those community partners, I think we're lucky to have the folks who showed up here tonight. So thank you for showing up.
I mean, it sounds like an incredible opportunity and like Ned said, a lot of interest. My question, I guess, either for you or for you, Melissa, if we wanted to pursue this, what would like the next steps be?
I can't speak for the city side of things. I can speak for the county, at least through my department, where we definitely have an interest in this. Again, it fits within something we've been looking at for a number of years. It's where do we go next? And I guess what I would say is I'd like to bring it back to Sustainability Commission next month with some expert input on this, a better background on the details of what are these other communities doing, so that we have some models that we could talk about in more detail and get a better handle on how extensive we want to make something like this, because it can be, like I said, granting is $45,000 to $300,000. Are we at the $45,000 end right now, or are we at the $300,000 end? And I don't have an answer for that one. And some of the stuff, like I say, I'm just digging through my files today, and I found these two yard waste. I knew we had one of them. I didn't realize we had two of them. Feasibility studies that had been done by the county for regional compost facilities. So some of that legwork is out there as well, but neither of these address the end of the process. When we were as a county working with UW Oshkosh, their biodigester, they were taking that material, they bring it in, they treat it for 28 days, then they pull it out, mix it with City of Oshkosh's yard waste composting material, and then turn it into Titan Gold, which you buy by the bag as compost.
So is that a revenue generator for the city then, or how? For the college, or how?
Yeah,
Because
John, do you know? I don't know offhand anymore.
My understanding is that it was a revenue generator for the college. They had it bagged and finished, because 28 days isn't enough to completely finish the product. But a third party, I think, hauled it from there, finished the product, and then bagged it and sold it. And I suspect there was a percentage of the profits helped UW Oshkosh.
I mean, working, being a city alder, we do services at the city, but we do have a few things that generate revenue. I'm just looking at if there's any ways to generate revenue. I think that would be something that I would be interested in. So definitely look at some of those possibilities.
Yeah, certainly part of any food waste collection program is avoided costs. I'm again speaking for the county, we own a landfill, and we're going to charge you $40-50 a ton to take garbage. If you don't have, if you were able to take 20 or 25% even of that of waste out of the waste stream and not have to pay that tipping fee. Even if you pay the same amount per ton, you're not burying it. You're getting a product from that. So there's certainly an avoided cost on not landfilling this material.
Yeah. Well, that needs to be brought out too. Different ways of looking at saving.
Melissa, would there be any like pertinent next steps for the city if we wanted to, I guess, pursue this or move forward?
Well, I mean, definitely in between now and the next time this is discussed at sustainability, there needs to be, a deeper discussion with, if this grant is even going to be an implementation grant at this point, the types of regulations that surround food, a drop-off site. But that would, I would say, be the first next step would be to get more staff involved in the discussion. But then if it's decided to move forward with applying for a grant, whether that's in partnership with a nonprofit or in partnership with the county, exactly who is going to be responsible for the grant. And I think I did write this in, I put this was in the agenda, that if this is decided to move forward, that grant writing assistance and reporting assistance would be the Sustainability Commission members would need to help out with the grant writing and some of the reporting to follow.
Yeah. Writing, but I haven't been grants, but.
No.
You-
I'm speaking more from, the staff perspective, the staff opinion as far as constraints on staff time to start a new program for the city. And all that's involved with that. And that's why I'm really excited to hear from some members of the public. Because there might be a different way of approaching this, where it would still benefit the city and the community, another community organization as well, so.
So are you looking for folks to raise their hand, do a few things before next meeting?
Well, I think Mark Walter, it would make sense for Mark to be involved with this for sure. I think John Arndt, because he has past experience in this as well. Amy, if there's any input from NWTC as far as what, if there could be a partnership, just brainstorming in general, I think that would be very helpful. So those would be, I guess, the top, as far as people involved at this point. We don't need to make, the first meeting too big.
Good point. They're all not in their heads, so.
So, I don't know if this was an action item, so what would the appropriate motion at this point be?
I'll receive and place on file.
Mhm.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
All right, a motion to receive and place on file by Alder Steuer. Is there a second? By John, all right. I believe this is some controversial. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. All right, received and placed on file, and sounds like we've got a team to look into this. This is super exciting.
And I got some action items for myself.
Yeah.
It is. To the next one.
Excellent, very, very good. Look forward to the next discussion on this. All right, on to informational. Are there any work group updates from folks? What month is this, Mark? Our theme month.
Oh,
This is-
are we gonna, do you wanna use any of those?
And
Director Daryl liked that. So.
Yeah, I'm waiting for you to email those to me so I can put them on Facebook.
I did.
Yeah,
yeah, they're in the inbox.
Yeah, I sent them out.
really?
What? Ah, that's my bad then. I totally missed that.
Yeah, go ahead and run with it.
That was March.
I sent them out with the meeting reminder, because this meeting came a week early, but I think all of
Okay.
those ideas is really brilliant monthly themed ideas are near the bottom of the email.
Didn't read to the bottom. That was my problem. Thank you.
I did talk to Director Grenier about it. He liked the concept of just, you know, even if we don't get really in depth each month with this, that it would just be points that, you know, you can put links in there. You can talk about different things about how to cut back on water. You know, I know some of it's common sense, but there might be some things out there that, you know, people would read on our website, city website, or what have you. So I'm cool with that.
Great.
This isn't really a work group update, but I'm gonna put it in here. Just a reminder that, February 25th is the, Aldo Leopold Conservation Day outreach event at the Brown County Library downtown. We do have some volunteers already lined up from Sustainability Commission. We have Mark Stoyer, Alder Stoyer, Corey Mim, myself, and then Krista is going to be at a different table, but right next to our table, representing Wisconsin Sustainable Business Council,
Nailed it.
Yeah, so if anyone else would like to attend that, there's a lot of great tables. We set up at 1:30, so please be there for 1:30. And then it's only about an hour and a half of being at the table, and then afterward there is a Aldo Leopold film about his writings and land ethic. So that's in the theater down in the basement level of the downtown library.
Are they gonna have the rain barrels?
There'll be a rain barrel there. I don't know about the other, I don't know about that. No one's been working on that yet. And we'll have the energy survey as part of the comprehensive energy plan available for people to take. And anything else that the Sustainability Commission would like to talk to members of the public about and promote.
This would be too early with the project that you're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's too early. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm unfortunately not gonna be there, be able to make that. It's my daughter's birthday. And golden birthday, she's 25 on the 20th, so we're going.
As far as, I'll just talk for a minute about some of the outreach we've been doing regarding the community-wide comprehensive energy plan. Today, we had a tabling event at the Aging and Disability Resource Center on Adams Street in Green Bay, and we were there from 11 until 1. Talking to people about the community survey and assisting members of the public that would like to take the survey that either maybe don't have a computer or have maybe some physical challenges where they're not able to do the survey in the traditional way. So we did that. Seth Hoffmeister and myself and Maddie from our Slipstream, our consultant, was there today, and it went really, really well. We met some wonderful people. And the survey is open until the end of the month. We do need more business surveys done. We only have around 20 businesses that have replied for the survey. We are doing extremely well with residential input. We have almost 650 surveys from Green Bay residents regarding the plan.
So generally been pretty positive, because I know.
I am not reading them, Mark.
You're just,
Alder Stoyer, I am not, because
right, I know, I'm just.
I mean, they're coming in all the time. So I'm going to save that work for the consultant. Yeah, so that's where we're at. We're in the outreach phase, and we've reached out to the business incentive districts, the Chamber of Commerce. I know Krista's done some outreach as well with her contacts. We do have cards that we're going to set out at the YMCA, the YWCA, Casa Melanie, and some other community organizations as well. But if you have contacts with business owners or people authorized to speak to this on behalf of organizations like, executive directors of nonprofits and things like that that have facilities, please spread the word to those folks.
Cool. Other updates from folks? All right, well, I think that brings us to end of the meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
By Ned, is there a second?
I'll second.
By Mark Walter, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Bye.
All those opposed, say nay. All right,
All right.
adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stopped at.